Greetings, Resound viewers and friends of my own that I'm sharing this with on YouTube, Facebook, etc. I've had a few revelations over the last 24 hours. As we all do at some point, we think about where we are and who we are, and perhaps try to compare that to who we thought we would be or where we thought we would be at this time of our lives. And I came to one striking conclusion tonight, that I am a different fish. Now, I'm going to clarify that. That sounds a little bit weird. I was dictating this into my phone while I was making supper tonight because I wanted to have some semblance of a script instead of freestyling and running on some kind of tangents. So, as you can see here, here's my phone, here's my notes. I wanted to keep this really stripped down and bare bones. I'm not doing any fancy edits or anything like that. Not that I'm a fancy editor. So here goes. This is what this was my inner monologue or dialogue, whatever, as I was making supper. It says, so I've spent a few weeks newly signed up to LinkedIn. And I've made a few really good connections so far with people who do what I also do. Through those networks, I've seen many other people who do what I do as well. And that old self-doubt monster reared its ugly head. And I started thinking back to when I started to, quote, find my way musically. And that was with fingerstyle guitar. Instrumental fingerstyle guitar, largely. As many did before me, and many have done since. I strived to emulate, without copying, those performers and those styles that I found most interesting. This was around the year 2000, and this particular style of guitar playing featured the virtuosity of its creators beyond the typical classical or jazz repertoire. And in many ways, I fit right in. Although the internet itself was fairly new as far as a common household thing, and I was still on dial-up internet at the time, I found many ways to showcase my material through the blossoming of the internet radios and various other musical groups online. And then again, the ego monster was fueled. At one point, I actually earned a place on a top 5 list of performers in that particular style in, of all places, Egypt. I sold a bunch of CDs and had all kinds of fan mail, I guess you could call it. And it felt great. But as the years went on, I started to find that I was competing somehow against what I call the flash and dash style of playing, where it seemed more about the tricks that a guitar player could do rather than the quality or integrity of the melody and the lyrics and otherwise compositional style of the guitarist. My heart did not want to follow that path. It's not that my technical expertise wasn't there. It's just that I felt like I was getting caught in a wave of musical douchebaggery or one-upmanship. And that was totally not where my heart and mind were then or now. So I tried my best to settle into my own way of songwriting. Lyrics built on experience, real or hypothetical. I would write country songs because I felt that would be the most appropriate place for those sentiments that I was expressing to be placed. I started dabbling in electronic music through an iPhone app called Nano Studio, which was amazing. It was very liberating as a guitar player. And now I'm playing more piano than guitar. And I try to put an hour a night into it, and I think I'm making some progress. So, getting back to my opening words about LinkedIn, I had a moment, or rather several moments over the past few days, where that monster started to look at these other folks and say, wow, they have better gear than I do, or newer gear than I do, or they've worked with much more famous people than I have, or they're associated with larger companies than I've ever been. And I started to feel like a tiny fish in a huge sea. But tonight, while cooking supper, I had a revelation of sorts. And I think it's a very important revelation that seems to elude many people. And that is that I am not a tiny fish in a huge sea. I am a different fish. And despite all those years' previous moments of self-doubt and frustration with where I was compared to other people that I knew or saw, I started to realize that I am exactly where I should be. And as though that's trite, you hear that all the time. You need that kind of revelation to come to you. You need to arrive at that revelation. You don't just need to read it on a Facebook meme and click like as if you have met that realization. And it brings to mind that saying, you do you. And it really makes a lot of sense to me now. And this seemingly small revelation took place over perhaps half an hour of introspection while I washed the dishes and prepared supper. And it's given me a lot of confidence to not only pursue and follow through with those projects and ideas that are laying somewhat dormant, somewhat recognized on my computer or in lyric books. It's given me also a feeling of bravery to go forward without any hesitation. A few years ago, I posted a rather cynical status update on Facebook, where I said, quote, "No society is ever remembered for its pencil pushers or cubicle dwellers." I think that was me trying to elevate myself in a totally ego-fueled way, above many of those that I saw around me, who, with the regular 9-to-5 jobs, were enjoying a more successful life than myself. And that was a mistake. And I'm also very sorry for saying that. But the artist's ego is fragile. We pour all of our waking and often sleeping hours into our creations. And we come to take them very seriously, regardless of how others may perceive what we create. They say, an artist creates because they must. And that's very true. Any art that is created from the standpoint of somebody trying to make money or make a living will always be shallow, lacking in meaning, integrity, and will all eventually be forgotten. But when one creates from their innermost motivations, and then, now thanks to the internet, can release it to the world, which typically means your closest group of friends, sometimes it hits really hard when something that we feel so passionately about, have poured many hours into the creation of, with sometimes very expensive gear, and to receive not what our former self thought was the adulations or the successes, it makes it seem fruitless and pointless, as it would for anyone. And when we don't get that recognition, we tend to train ourselves to doubt ourselves, which leads to a very deep rooting of some really negative programming. So when you hear those trite sayings about artists are moody or disconnected from the rest of the world, it's often a twofold cause to that. One, We are often creating our future creations in our mind, minute to minute, moment to moment, regardless of our surroundings. Either from things sourced in dreams, or perhaps even a misheard lyric, or the sudden scent of decomposing maple leaves while a cool breeze brushes our face after months of hot and humid stillness. Or we distance ourselves so that we can no longer be hurt. To try to maintain or juggle, as it were, a balance between these two states of mind is precarious at best. But we do it, as they say, because we must. So, this different fish is about to swim into some very new waters. Quite frankly, I don't care what people think about it. What I create, how I create. It's not that I don't care about you. It's that I must finally follow that notion that an artist creates because he must. And that's where I concluded my dictation into my phone. And there have been a lot of sources through the years that have pointed me to come to these revelations. And I've often poo-pooed them, as you would say, chosen to ignore them, or whatever it happens to be. But I find at this time in my life, at my age, when I've done the things that I've done, and not done certain things that I want to yet do, I can't hold the light of somebody else's successes up as some sort of beacon for myself anymore. I could see, these incredibly successful people, much younger than me, who went to the same school as me, gone on to work with, multinational corporations doing super cool things. And I can't let that get under my skin, if you know what I mean. We've all been there. Everybody has. There's not been one of us who has not measured themselves against their peers, or even people who they think are their peers. I've enjoyed a wonderful career in music, teaching, performing, writing, releasing music, recording for others, and that's not going to stop. But what's going to happen is I am reprioritizing what I do, and I'm doing it unabashedly and with confidence. And who knows what tomorrow may bring.